Hello, I'm Peter Lundberg, and welcome to our seminar on closing the period and year in Sage 100. Since Sage 100 is fully GAAP compliant, we need to go through on a regular period-by-period basis, reconcile our sub-accounts and close them. We may leave the general ledger open for many months, but individual modules should be closed on a regular basis to avoid having to audit too much information when you do get around to closing them. Today's discussion, we're going to be discussing the best practices in following this process. We want to make sure that we have a current backup anytime we're going to be closing. We want to have a plan for how we want to close and follow it. Others should be out of the system, or at least out of the modules that are currently being closed to avoid having issues with data if something is open or not in your closing. And finally, before you start the close, you want to make sure you have enough time to close the section of modules that you are planning on closing on that particular day. First, on the backup, depending on the version that you're in, backups can take place any number of different ways, but you do want to make sure that you have a backup of your whole company before you begin the close process. And during the close processes, you want to make backups of the individual section modules that are to be closed at that particular time, so that if anything happens during the close process, it can be restored. A lot of records get updated, changed, modified during the close to reflect the fact that you are now in a new period. And if something interrupts that process, bad things can happen to your data. There are many documents out there you can find from Sage, either in the help files, on your customer portal, in the knowledge base. If you own any of the training products in the training lessons plans, you can find information on closing. And there's actually a whole section on Sage City on closing your program, although a lot of the stuff on Sage City is geared towards payroll. We're going to be following a plan that we developed in-house, a best practices plan. And if you need a copy of this or want a copy, you can just email us, and we can get that out to you so you can modify it to your particular needs. We're done with that. So here's a copy of the plan itself that we are going to be following. The first thing you have to recognize is that modules should be closed in a particular order. If you were to go out and take a look at Sage information about the various plans, you can look up this exact order in the knowledge base. Modules that you don't own, you can skip. And in this plan, this is designed just in Excel. So if there is a plan or modules that you don't use, we can go ahead and just remove those from our plan and just not use those. Our first step is we're going to keep track of this plan right on the spreadsheet rather than printing it out. We probably want to save this. And I'm going to be closing May 2020. So I'm going to be labeling it as such so that I know that I can come back and take a look and see where I was at. The order that these are in, again, is important because some modules affect other modules. So we start out with the modules that affect our inventory so that later on we can close our inventory. So some of the things that we need to do in these modules will affect other things. So like, as I said, POs will affect our inventory, it'll affect our accounts payable, it may affect our returns module, although the returns module doesn't get closed, but it can affect these other modules. We have checklists for various types of functions. So in this case, we're doing a month end. So here's our month end checklist. Again, you can modify this to meet your particular needs rather than what we have thought up. Add new things, remove things that you do not do. Here's our purchase order section here and all of the individual details of things that we need to do. We also have a quarter end checklist. This is more geared towards payroll. With payroll, you do need to close each quarter and print out tax documentation if you're running the payroll module. We've got a couple of year-end checklists. One is a review for things for your taxes, and this is really open depending on the types of taxes and things that you want to make sure you audit or check before you file your returns. These are just suggestions of possible things to do. And then sometimes in an individual module, there are different things that need to be done on a year-end basis as opposed to just on a month-end, such as the accounts payable. We also need to print out things like 1099s at some point. I'm going to back up here to my month-end list. And you'll notice that first thing on this list is paperless office. Paperless office is a convenient way to archive your reports, forms, journals, month-end processing reports. All of these functions can be set up to store things automatically in PDF files, in files inside the system so that you don't have to be wasting paper for all of this stuff. Sometimes it's easier to read on paper and you might want to print things out on paper first before you go through these things, but this is a good setup. So I'm going to go into our Sage 100. Please bear with me. I like to use, can you guys see this okay, or do I need to increase the resolution? I'm sorry, I forgot to do that before we got started. Anybody? You can.
It's okay.
It's a little small. Okay, let me go and actually go and increase the resolution here. Usually this is okay for most people. Back over here. Is this better? Okay, good enough. So I'm going to go into paperless office first. Usually the first time you go in here during the day, it's going to pop up and ask you for an accounting date. I think I've gone through and set those on all the modules, but bear with me if that pops up again sometime during today. You'll notice in paperless office, once it's been turned on, we have to turn it on using this option. But we can set up information for storing journals and registers. We can set up information for storing month-end, period-end reports. We can set up information for just storing regular reports or storing and electronically mailing forms out of the system. So this is month-end, and I may have to post some journals, and I may have to print reports for, or I will have to print reports for the period end. I'm going to go in and check the settings. This particular company just is storing everything for all journals under a folder called Journals. Some people like to reorganize their data storage archives to have separate archives for each period, things like that. So you want to make sure that these get updated to correct folders before you get started. So that one's okay for me right now. And I'm going to check the period end reports also, because we're going to run that as well. And I just got that going to a folder called ME for month end. So those are okay, so I can get started. Let's go back to our checklist and take a look at our first object under purchase orders. Most of these modules do have a little description at the top that tells you what is going to take place during the period end, especially if things are going to get purged or updated, things like that. You may want to glance at those. Usually don't have too many problems here in purchase orders, but you can. And notice first thing on this list is make a backup. I cannot stress that too much. It is the first thing for every single module. Make a backup. If things mess up during the close and you don't have a place to restore, you may have lost data restoring back to yesterday's backup or whatever is being done for automatic backup. Step number 2, we want to make sure that all receipts, invoices, returns, and issues have been recorded for the month. So inside purchase orders, we have our standard entry windows for entering purchase orders, for entering receipt of goods, entering our invoices, entering our returns, entering our material issues. All of these things should be checked for open batches and confirm that those batches have been posted and updated prior to the close. We can do this simply by opening them up. My purchase orders are not set, purchase orders are not set up for batches, sorry. It wouldn't be, but here's our receipt of goods. Receipt of goods in this particular program is not set up for batches. Receipt of invoices won't be either. Return of goods is probably not set up for batches either. So we can go out and just look at the information and see if there's anything pending out there. As a cross check, since we don't have batches, we can go through and print the registers to see if there's anything to update. Nope, that's the return. And there's nothing to update here. So our first step is go through all of our data entry windows and review that information. When everything has been updated in the module, we more than likely want to update it to the general ledger as well. And again, this file is currently empty. I've got everything already updated. Boy, I'm on top of things. So now we can go down and look at our period end menu. Now, let's go back over here to our report. So we could check that off and say done. We might want to review our purchase orders. Print out reports. Zero out or close any purchase orders that have not been completed. Again, here's our print the registers. The next step is actually found on the period end report. Anything that you need to do on a regular basis as part of a period end usually is on that period end menu. So if I go back over here to our period end menu, we've got our clearing reports, and there's 2 different formats here that we can print out in, and it doesn't matter which one you do. You can decide which one is easier for you to read. And we want to review this and make sure that we don't have any issues with the things that are uncleared. This report gives you information about quantities ordered, quantities received, quantities invoiced, so that you can see if there are any differences. So here we've got a difference. We've received 99 and we've invoiced -1. So we may have to take and look at some of these things to confirm the numbers on here that something odd isn't happening. That's what this report is for, so that you can see the differences between what is being entered and posted and what is showing up as far as inventory is concerned and going to the general ledger. This is a way that you can see the numbers that are in your purchases clearing account. Your purchases clearing account is an account that gets affected when you have received items into inventory but have not yet received the invoice, or if you have received the invoice and have not yet received the items, it goes into the purchase clearing account a different way. So we need to check this number against the general ledger. We want to review our details to make sure there are no issues that can be resolved before we close. Our next step, we don't really need to do every time we close. And this is confirm the reports we want to print out as part of the close. So these are the reports that I have selected. We have all of the reports available to us on the purchase order reports menu. So these reports are also available on this reports menu. We could have printed them out manually beforehand for confirmation. By printing them out as part of the close process, you are for sure have the latest up-to-date information in those reports just before the close, because you're closing afterwards and nobody can affect that period anymore after the close. We have the report name and the report settings. You might have 3 or 4 different versions of any of those reports. I don't really have any other versions of reports in here, but aside from the standard report that came with the system, you might have customized ones, and you can choose the purchase history report and choose a customization as well and include that on the list if you choose to. Make sure I didn't miss anything here. This has to do with auditing that clearing report. We might want to confirm our history retention settings. All modules have various amounts, various information for retaining purchase orders or retaining information in the system. So if you'll notice, my system is set to not retain any completed purchase orders. Because I have it set to 0 during the close process, any completed purchase order is actually going to be removed from the system. So that's pretty much the only history information available to you in the setups for purchase orders. Oh, there is a history tab. We also have history for purchased items, how long that is. So some of these things, when they reach these limits, they automatically get removed from the system. So we want to confirm, at least on a yearly close basis, how long we want to keep this information if our original settings are correct or incorrect, or we want to change those for some reason. We already looked at the reports to be printed out. So our last step is to actually perform the period end. And this is maybe the only module I'm doing this on, but I'm going to do this as part of the process. We're going to print our period end reports. Some people go through and print the reports once, do not complete the close, audit all of their reports, and then come back in. And since others should be out of the system, if we're still in that mode, you can actually close at that point without printing the reports. But if you're going to do it both at the same time, you leave that checked, tell it proceed. We can confirm the reports that we have selected on the previous menu. Go ahead and print it. In this case, since we have paperless office set up, it's going to send it to our paperless office. Unlike when we're printing registers and journals, the reports will not come up on screen for you to preview during this PDF print process. They are just being stored. And it shouldn't take too long in this sample company. And now my reports are done. At this point, we can, again, if we haven't audited the reports at this point, we can go through and look at the reports in PDF in the paperless office, print them out and confirm information. When everything is okay, as far as we can tell, we can go ahead and close. And the close process isn't very much in purchase orders other than reducing history. The only thing that it does is go through and in the setup menu, it increases our current period by 1. So we're now no longer in May, we are now in June. We go through this process for each and every module. So as we go down this process here, we can make notes. If we are going to not continue with other closes at this point, we may at this point want to take an after close backup. Our next module, which also affects inventory, all right, we want to make sure that we close purchase orders and sales orders before we do anything with inventory. Similar process, backup. Verify our invoices have all been printed, processed, and sent. Print and update the registers. These are all the same things that we've done in purchase orders. Take a look at our open orders report and make sure that we don't have anything that we need to clean up in the open orders. Once that has all been cleaned up and taken care of, we can go and we might want to back up the file again if we've made changes. Again, we confirm the history settings in sales orders. We confirm the reports that we want to process during the closing process. Again, all of these things are the same as we looked at before. There's just in a different module. So again, this is laid out in the same order. Here's our period end closing. Here's our processing selection. So here are the reports that we have set to process for this close. We may want to add another report to this because I noticed that let's see if I can find it, monthly sales report. It's probably in accounts receivable, not in sales orders, so never mind. That's why I don't see it. So again, here's our reports, and then we go through the same process for period end. Are there any questions so far? All right, let's continue on with our message here. Next, we're going to close inventory. Inventory, aside from doing the standard types of things where we go through backup, verify any inventory transactions are posted and set up, we might have a physical inventory that we need to deal with. Some people do physicals monthly, others do them quarterly, others do them only annually. I do recommend that you do it at least annually. But this thing needs to be planned out and executed prior to a close. We then go ahead and update all of our journals. If we have LIFO, FIFO, lot, or serialized items, again, because this is part of something that we might want to do as period end, we need to review our negative tier report. Our negative tier report shows us the different cost buckets that have ended up with negative quantities and negative values. You may have your security set to not allow negative quantities and negative values, but if you have it set so that they are available, these things should be resolved on a monthly basis to determine why these are negatives and correct the information prior to close. If you wait until the end of the year to do this, you're never going to figure out what happened in January, why you ended up negative. It's just too long ago. So if there are negative tiers, there is actually a function to resolve those negative tiers, but this means that there needs to be a positive tier to balance it against. So each one of those negative tiers, we want to make sure to put in an inventory adjustment or some other transaction that results in a positive tier for at least that number of items so that we can run this report and balance that out and get our inventory back in whack. So again, backups. I got lots of backups in here. I'm of the fervent opinion you can never have too many. Again, there's history settings we can check. We confirm our reports that we want printed out as part of the month end. And then we can go through and print those reports and complete the settings. Afterwards, we should check to make sure we closed properly and didn't hit that close button twice by accident. And we may want an additional backup when we're done. We also may want to go through and run some of the utilities to purge old items, merge items together, whatever it is that we want to do for one of the utilities. Part of the month end generally puts it in a state where we can do some of these things. Some of those utilities will not work if there is open transactions, open history, things like that. So this is the best time to do it is immediately following the month end close. I'm going to skip some of these. My installation, I can't really get into payroll because this particular one is expired. So, but these are the steps to go through payroll. Payroll has similar processing steps to the other modules. It does have some additional requirements in that you need to report your information to the government at various times. So anytime you do a payroll deposit, you need to tell the government you made that deposit. On a monthly basis, You more than likely have to fill out a 941 form, or it might be a quarterly basis. But all of these things require you to fill out information and send it to the government as part of your close process. There is also a lot of work to do, especially at year end for payroll. Sage puts up a fact sheet every single year about payroll closes, and some of this information, mirrors exactly the same thing that they did the prior year. If there is something new, requirements or such, they are included in this document. You can download it and look at it. I think this is the payroll one. Should have opened it beforehand, but nope, that's not it. Oh, here it is. Here's the one for last year. This is going to be kind of small. I'll blow it up here. The one for the current year is not up yet, so we can't get to that information. But it takes you through the steps that you need to run through and give you links to things like, here's our link to Sage City to look up various things for year end. As I mentioned before, there's year-end resources there. It gives you year-end resource processing for things like filing your W-2s. There's even a link to training or forms if you need to order your document. All of these things can be found in this step. Pretty much as an overview, you need to look at this. You need to order your forms in time to be able to print them before the deadlines. If you're going to be printing your W-2s, W-3s, things like that, you need to order those forms if you're going to print them out to mail them. If you're going to do them electronically, you don't need to worry about it because most of the forms printing is electronic to begin with. And even the paper you printed on has just got stuff on the back page and is perforated for you to send. But this information should be ordered in advance to make sure you have them available to you when you're ready to print. There might be a year-end interim update called an IRD. And this has to do with any last-minute program changes that are required to be able to fill out the forms because the forms may be new from the government. Before you do your payroll for the next year, you need to download the tax table update for the next year, the TTU they call it, and make sure to get that installed. And there is information in each of these downloads on how to process this particular step going forward. If you have the Sage Fixed Assets module, year-end is done in that module, not in inside Sage 100. Fixed Assets is actually an external program with links into the system. And finally, when we get all of the other modules completed, if we're ready to close the general ledger, we can go through and close that as well. I must have skipped or missed the step for the bank reconciliation. Bank reconciliation should be done on a monthly basis. The bank reconciliation itself does not close for the period. We simply reconcile the accounts. It closes when the general ledger closes. And I think that's it for all of the processing that we need to do to go through and close our periods inside Sage 100. Let's go back here and let this back up here. So if there are any questions, go ahead and unmute yourselves and go ahead and ask them. Anything?
Peter, this is Linda. I have a question. On the knowledge base, does it show you how to make just selected module backup?
No, it does not. Sage itself does not recommend or tell you how to do backups. Let me go back here because I was going to show this and it looks like I forgot to do that.
Good.
Inside Sage 100, there is no backup process as there is in something like Sage 50.
Right.
To make a quick and dirty backup, like just before you're going to do the close, and all I want to do is make sure I have a backup so that if it messes up in the meantime, the easiest thing to do, because I'm probably not going to keep this backup. So the easiest thing to do is to actually come into company maintenance. And you can see what I've done here is I've set up a company that I even title temporary backup. And what I can do in all versions, all releases of Sage 100 is I can copy information from one company to another.
Right.
So this temporary backup can do that. All right, before I actually going to copy that.
Make it a temporary copy.
Yeah, before I actually copy it, I'm going to go to the master console because this is another thing that you should be familiar with for backups. And this shows me all of the other users that are in the system and what company they're in and what process they are currently running. Currently, I'm the only one in the system. Here's the workstation I'm logged in from. Here's the company I'm in. But none of these things are actually data information. Backups work just fine so long as no data files are currently opening. Right, so since no data files are currently open, I don't have my invoice entry window open, I don't have customer maintenance, and I don't have anything like that open. So I can go ahead and go back and do a backup by simply hitting the copy company button. And I'm going to call up the company I want to copy to, hit the copy button. It's going to give me a little warning message. And I'm going to say I'm going to copy from the company that I'm going to back up. Now I can copy individual modules or the whole thing. Depends kind of what you're doing at the moment. If I'm going to be closing sales orders though, for instance, I want to close all of the modules that might link into sales orders as well, because closing sales orders might make changes in some other modules. So I want to make sure sales orders is backed up. I want to make sure inventory is backed up. I want to make sure accounts receivable is backed up. I want to make sure return authorizations is backed up. Because all of those things can affect or be affected by sales orders. So these is just to back up the whole thing. And I'm going to proceed. Again, nobody can be in the modules you're backing up, or the backup may not have taken place properly. Because it will not back up open records. So I'll go ahead and say OK. and then it'll go ahead and copy this. And then I can do the same process to copy it back if something happens during the close.
Okay.
Any other questions?
No, that's kind of what I thought you were doing, but I just wanted to see. I wish
But
there
you
was
do want to
another
make sure you
option.
have an archival copy.
Mhm.
Let's see if I have
Yep.
it open. Oh, let's go here. Now I have multiple versions of Sage 100 on here, so this looks
Yeah,
kind
I
of
saw
full.
that.
These are all different versions of Sage 100.
That's
This is what
okay.
I'm currently working in.
So
Here's
you can compare sizes, right?
here's my actual data files. All
Mhm.
right. So inside here, we can also make quick and dirty backups as well if you're in the standard edition or the advanced edition. Again, so long as people are out of the company, here's my company name, AB2, AB2.
And I see your back.
I'm not in any data entry windows, so all of the tables are available for copying.
Mhm.
And I can make a quick and dirty copy simply by right-clicking on that and telling it to compress it. Sorry.
So it just sends it to the desktop. That's fine.
Nation first. All right. Okay, so this is better. And I'm going to go ahead and compress it. And then it makes a zipped copy of that company. And we want to date it so we know when it was created. Now this only has company information. This hasn't backed up anything like if you have customizations to your database, it doesn't back up the actual data file definition. It doesn't back up your user names and settings. It doesn't back up shared resources like your zip code file or your text table files. This is for backing up your company information only. This is not a full backup, but again, this is a different way to do a quick and dirty backup. If we were in the SQL edition, you would need to go into the SQL Server Manager and make that backup through SQL in order to get a full copy. Again, others need to be out of the system for the backup to be valid. This compressed file, and I don't think the SQL backup or the backup that we did inside Sage 100 when we copied the company, none of those things actually check for open files before you back it up. But if there are files open, you won't be able to restore some of those files, and the restore doesn't work good. So that's why I pointed out specifically, before you do any of these backup message, make sure that nobody else has files or records open that you're going to back it up, that are going to be restored.
Okay.
Right. Any other questions?
Good to know. No, thank you. I appreciate that.
All right. Since there's no other questions, I guess we can end for today.
Thank you, Peter.
Thank you very much for joining me. We have a lot of help videos out on YouTube. Although, to tell you the truth, I don't know if we have a channel or not. But I know there's some out there. So please join us, take a look, and see what you can find, or join us for some of our other demonstrations. Thank you.
Thank you.